Okay, we're going to get started, and today, tomorrow, and next week we're going to go through the material that's covered in Chapter 6, which is related to mainly the PVT laboratory tests, but it also touches on sampling. So these are going to be the topics for this week and next week. And to get started, basically just to give a review of what is PVT. By that we mean having the fluid properties, density and viscosity primarily, whether the fluid is one or two phases, and if it's two phases, how much of each phase, and the properties of each phase, density and viscosity. In addition to that, we also need to know either to calculate the properties, viscosity and density, and or to understand something about how the different components, methane, ethane, etc., partition into the two phases or three phases, whatever's there. We also need the ability through these flash calculations that we've been doing to find out how the components, the moles of the various components, partition into the various phases. That's basically what we mean by PVT. And these properties and phase amounts and so forth vary as a function of pressure and temperature and composition. Now, the way to get this PVT information, there's basically two ways. The one way is to make measurements, and to make measurements you have to have samples. That's what we're going to be talking about this week and next week. And in general, that's always where we start, is collecting samples, taking those samples to a laboratory, and letting the laboratory conduct a suite of conventional tests to obtain properties, number of phases, and so forth. A second approach, which is usually an extension to that method of having measurements, is that you build a model, some kind of equation or set of equations that describes the PVT behavior, and not only in the realm where you have measurements, but outside that realm. And when I mean realm, I mean within the laboratory we can only make so many measurements. They cost a lot of money. They take time. So there's only a certain pressure, temperature, composition space where you can make measurements. And in the actual reservoir production system into the surface, you may go outside that pressure, temperature space and need properties outside where these measurements have been made. Therefore, we have to build models, typically matching the measurements, but models that are more general character. Is that clear? That's kind of the strategy for doing PVT. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to kind of draw something that is not drawing. So if this is kind of a multi-dimensional space, pressure, temperature, composition, we basically have our PVT lab data that we're going to be talking about in this realm. Okay? And then we have the need for PVT data, which covers this realm, and I'll change colors here. Maybe go to purple. And let's say that this realm of where we need PVT data for engineering calculations design, etc., is larger than that pressure temperature composition space. Okay? So the question is, how do we get the properties outside the realm where we make the measurements? And to do that, we typically build a model, a PVT model, which we're not going to talk about in this course, which in principle should encompass both the realm where we have measurements here, but it actually will hopefully describe the pressure, volume, temperature behavior far outside that realm, and in fact outside the realm of all required calculations. And this is basically what we refer to as a PVT model. Now, this course is an introductory course, so we're not really going to talk so much about the PVT modeling. We've already touched on a method of modeling, the flash equation, the flash calculations. So you are doing a little bit within modeling, but you're not really going to work on the more general modeling that one can do. The second part of this course is going to talk about fluid flow and material balance. Okay? These are basically reservoir engineering applications. We're also going to talk about pressure drop in pipe. So we are going to, in this course, talk about engineering calculations. So you will see some of this overlap between where you make measurements, where you don't have measurements, and so forth. But this is kind of the general strategy and structure of trying to deal with the need for PVT properties. So let's now talk about this blue box, the PVT lab data. In order to make measurements, we have to have samples. Okay? So basically, we're going to start by talking about sampling. Okay? And there are three principal types of samples that can be collected in a well. Okay? So the first thing you have to do is you have to have a well. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make a sketch here. That's the first requirement. I won't number it number one because I was telling you that there are three types of samples. So basically we simply have to have a well. So I'm going to sketch this well, and I'm going to make kind of a reservoir down here. You know, maybe I'll make it into a what they call braided sands, or it's kind of a sand body that's sealed off on the top and the bottom and the sides by shale, by tight rock. And inside this reservoir, I'm going to draw basically I'm going to let this reservoir contain both gas and oil. Okay, so this is going to be containing gas and oil. You know, and at the very bottom there might be water, there might not be water. It doesn't. I mean, there's water in all of the pores, but there may not be a free water phase. There might be. I'll go ahead and put one in here just to make this kind of a general system. So let's say that this is the water down here. So what we would call this line here basically is the water-oil contact, giving you more terminology to remember, or sometimes it's referred to as the oil-water contact. This would be what we would refer to as the gas-oil contact. And so let's say that we drill this well, and I'm going to drill a, you know, it's drilling through here, it goes through. I'm going to drill a fairly large size hole here. This is exaggerated, you know, either that or we have a very small reservoir. But I'm going to do this for a specific reason. Okay, so already this is out of proportion because this is the drilling bit size, and of course I'm not including all of the casing. In fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of put dot, dot, dot up to the surface. And of course you've got other casing strings here that I'm not going to talk about that. It's more the well completion and drilling. But let's say it's a shallow well, so we have a single main production casing string that goes top to bottom. And so this is the rock, basically the rock here. This is the hole. So this is an open hole completion right now. So we've just drilled the well through the formation. And because we've drilled out the formation, I'm going to take everything away because now we have the well bore, which is full of mud. Okay? Typically full of mud. That's so that the well doesn't blow out. And so once we're in this, so we've completed drilling of the well. We have direct rock up against, basically the well. And there's a decision to take the first type of sample. Okay, so these are sample types. Like I said, there's basically 3 of them. So the first one is what I will refer to as open hole formation test. Okay? This is the generic name. Nobody uses this name because basically there's one company, Schlumberger, who you guys saw the CEO running around the halls here yesterday. Well, he wasn't running around the halls, but he was kind of in the building. The Schlumberger tool that does this is the most used of all the tools. There are a couple of other companies that have similar tools, but the one that's Schlumberger, and I'm not selling their products. We didn't make an agreement yesterday where I get paid to come in and tell you this, but the MDT, the Modular Something Dynamic Tester, is an open hole formation test tool, which is the most used. There's also one called the RCI by some other company. I'm not sure which one, and there's probably other ones. But what this tool does is that in an open hole completion, it actually runs a mini production test. It actually produces whatever fluid's in the reservoir into the wellbore. Okay? So basically you've got this wellbore full of mud. Hopefully it's capped off here. You run this tool in the well. I'm going to make a not very pretty picture of this because, okay, and I'm just going to make this big old tool here. It might be, I don't know, 10 meters long, I'm not sure. And I'm going to exaggerate it. It has kind of a nose, okay, and this nose kind of, and this is also out of proportion, but this is just because I'm not trying to teach you what's really going on. It's just kind of conceptually. So basically we've got mud in the well. We've got this tool coming down here, and inside this tool here, this MDT tool, there's pumps, there's sophisticated electronics, there are containers that we're going to collect samples in, and what essentially happens is that you start the pumps in this tool and you start flowing fluid, whatever's in the reservoir, into this nose. It flows through here, it flows through the tool, and then it squirts out into the annulus. So it's not like producing a lot of volume, okay, but it's producing, and it's producing what is specifically around this nose tip. So it's doing a production test, and it might last 2 or 4 or maybe even 6 hours, and it's producing this fluid, and inside this sophisticated tool there's sensors. I think there's like resistivity, and there's all sorts of complicated things indicating whether you're producing hydrocarbons or water. Okay? Actually, what kind of fluid you're producing. Okay. So it's like a mini production test. Okay? And the information that you get out of that test, for this purpose of what we're talking about, is one or maybe multiple samples of what's flowing in from the reservoir. Okay? It collects what's coming in from the reservoir. So there might be these chambers in here, there might be 5 or 6 of them, and instead of sending this fluid that's being produced out into the mud, you can transfer it into these cylinders. And all of this is being controlled at the surface with a joystick, so if you like playing games, you might want to go to work for Schlumberger or one of its competitors and kind of control these tools during the testing. And just because I'm not just a PVT guy, there is one other very important piece of information gotten from this particular test that I want to tell you about, and it's essentially the reservoir pressure at this particular depth. Okay? So what happens is that in this mini production test, which I'm running out of space, so I'm going to sketch it over here, what you basically have is versus time, and this is typically 2, 4, if you're really lucky, you might get 6 hours of production testing. And this is the rate of the pump. And this thing will go an oscillatory way because it's pump. It's the pump action. And you'll get this production rate like that. Okay? And then they'll stop pumping it like that. And then they'll be measuring the pressure, and they'll have some kind of pressure here initially, and this thing will go down like that. I gotta take away this scribbling here. This pressure will go down like that. It might go down 1 bar, might go down 10 bar, might go down 100 bar. Depends on the permeability. Okay? Because the pump rate's kind of given by the little pump in the tool. And then once you stop producing this, maybe you collect the samples here and collect the sample here, I don't know. Then there's a pressure buildup. And this pressure right here is a very important pressure. This basically reflects what they think is the reservoir pressure, static, the static reservoir pressure of the flowing phase. So it's, if you're unlucky, it's flowing water. You took the test down here, it would flow water. It's giving you the water pressure. So the reservoir pressure of the, I'm just going to write parenthesis, either gas or oil or water. Whatever phase is flowing. And it gives you that pressure, and that pressure is very important for a number of reasons. But one of those reasons it's important is for the so-called PVT, knowing what fluid system is in the reservoir at a given depth. Okay? Whether it's gas or oil or water. So this is another kind of extra piece of information that we can use in our PVT analysis, which is phase identification. And I'm just going to sketch here. If we took these tests, I know I'm going through the wonderful text here. I'll just take away water oil contact and just leave the water oil contact here. Okay. So now I'm going to show you, if you ran if you ran these tests at different depths, which they will normally do, they might even test it in the water. They often do. They might not take samples in the water, but then again they might. So if you plot pressure versus depth here, then what you'll actually see, and I'm going to color code this, well, I'll do it after the fact. What you'll see is pressure data look something like this. Okay? You'll see pressure that looks like that. I'm going to make this a little bit less dramatic here. Okay, so these are our points. Make them black. And basically, because you guys know that a static column of fluid, right, that the pressure in a static column of fluid is basically equal to rho of the fluid times G. The pressure gradient versus depth, dz, or I'll use depth since I'm using d for depth here. The change in pressure with depth is given by the density of the fluid times the acceleration due to gravity. This is our high school stuff we learned. Static column of fluid. So if we take the slope, for example, through these 3 points, which seem to have a common slope here in red, this slope here is different than the slope here, which I'm going to have to try to... Damn, that was not very good. Okay. Straight line like that. It's not quite straight, but... Okay. And then we've got this last one. We've got 2 points that look on a different trend, and that trend, something like that. Okay? And in essence, what you're seeing is the red, these are reservoir pressures of a gas phase. These are reservoir pressures of the oil phase, and these are reservoir pressures of the water phase. Okay? And where those lines intersect defines the contact, where there is zero pressure difference between oil and water. And that occurs right here, according to this plot. It's a little bit off from what I had over here, but pretty close. And that is approximately here for the gas oil contact and the water oil contact. Okay? So we not only can collect a sample at the different depths, but we can also infer what kind of fluid type you have in the reservoir from the pressure gradient. And only those of you who go to work for Shell will not like my color coding of red for gas, green for oil, and blue for water, because Shell is the only international company in the world, the only company in the world who doesn't use that color coding. They use green for gas and red for oil. Don't ask me why. Okay? So this is basically the information we get from open hole formation testers, so-called MDT or RCI. Any questions? Now you will have a course, most of you, in what's called pressure transient analysis or well testing, okay, which is designed to estimate properties, mainly permeability and average pressure, from pressure transient, rate transient data using differential equations. Okay? Solutions to differential equations. It's a whole course. You maybe have 2 courses if you take reservoir engineering. This here is a mini pressure transient, and you can actually do analysis of that data. You have the rates, you have the pressures. It's not done very often, but it can be done. And one of the problems is you have to take care of these wiggles because you actually have rate variations, and the analytical solution assumes a constant rate. So you have to do something called convolution or deconvolution, superposition, as you learned in your differential equation courses. You have to use the methods of superposition to analyze this type of data. Anyway, so this can be done, and it's kind of a mini production test that can be analyzed. Any questions?
Does the test normally take 6 hours because you have like 10 points? Or
Yeah,
take a lot of time?
that's right. It does. But, I mean, 6 hours is kind of the upper limit. But certainly, you know, both the production period has to be at least 2 hours, because often you have drilling mud around the well. You don't want to produce the drilling mud. You want to produce what's beyond the drilling mud, the reservoir fluid. So you do have to have a certain amount of production time, and then you have to shut in long enough to get the pressure to build up again. So yes, it does take, you know, maybe anywhere from 4 to 12 hours a test. And it's expensive because it's rig time offshore. But the upside is that you can often avoid having to do production tests, actual production tests, after you case the well, if you've done this kind of testing. So in high permeability regions, Gulf of Mexico, offshore Africa, often in Norway, this type of test is all you really need, because it basically tells you you've got high permeability. It tells you what's in the reservoir, and that's all you need to know. Okay? So that's the first kind of test. Any other questions about this type of test? Okay. Now, I don't know how good this is. You know, when you have this kind of animation, why do you need YouTube, right? That's the question. Well, I did, you know, one time there was one of these companies, not Schlumberger, sent me a video of the MDT. I couldn't find it on my computer, so I found one on the internet. So maybe this is the Baker Hughes. I don't know which one this is. Can't. How do you get this to go back and start again? Just play. Y'all want to watch? It's like a 1-minute video? Or? Yeah, okay. Why not? It's better than... Okay. You hurt my feelings, but okay. Let's see. I've got to plug in this here. We'll probably kill the rest of the hour, but let's see. Is it the microphone or the earphones that we want to plug it into? Earphones? Okay. All right. And then how do I get it to go back to the beginning of this video? Let's see. Volume. I'll turn it up. And when I start playing, it's going to play it from here. How do I get it to go?
Refresh the page.
Refresh the page. Like this. All right. Maybe there is no noise. You guys see the nose? I don't know how to make it make sound. Maybe there is no sound. See? See, there's the nose. Huh? All right. See, that's the mud around. The black is the mud, and the green is the reservoir fluid. So it takes a while before the reservoir fluid comes in. We are having a fire alarm. We should probably leave, right? They're going to fire me. And you see it produces there, and this is actually being just... We're supposed to go out, I think. Okay.